wasn't rich, I was still very low income. I remember taking a walk and thinking, oh, I don't need to be famous anymore. And I went viral that month.
I'm a monkey and I have to pay my bills.
And I'll tell you, the way I did it was I laid on the floor for 8 hours first and panicked. That's how I did it.
Singers are the worst musicians across the board.
Oh, you have the tension levels of an active service member.
Wow.
I gotta find a way to get back in touch with Robert Greene. I had him on my podcast. He literally was like, call me up when your book is ready.
Cool.
And I lost his contact info.
Look desperately into the camera right now and we can make a clip out of this. We can say, Robert, please send Josh your email again.
I will send you the best space western work playlist on Spotify that
Hell yeah.
you'll ever get. Hey, this is Josh Terry, and this is Brain Juice with Noah Chrysler.
Josh, welcome to the show, man. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Cool. Josh, I've got an intro for you. I kind of write these intros like Marvel Cinematic Universe intros, like a superhero, okay? Here we go. Today on Brain Juice, I'm sitting down with Josh Terry, a creator, executive coach, and a modern-day social media philosopher who has built a thoughtful business around helping high performers get unstuck and build lives that they actually want to live. I first discovered Josh's work on Instagram, where one of his reels punched me in the gut. His ideas aren't soaked in hustle bro nonsense. To me, they're philosophy meeting practicality. As I grow this show, I'm using it as an opportunity to live out my dream of meeting and learning from interesting people across the internet. And Josh is one of those people. In his professional executive coaching business, Josh's time is worth thousands of dollars an hour. But today, he's here to share ideas and frameworks with me and you. Josh, welcome to Brain Juice. What do you think?
Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, as I've been building my business, I'm okay, what would be, I'm trying to find the cheat codes to life, right? And I'm okay, cool. What would be the coolest thing ever? And it's oh, talk to interesting people, learn as much as I possibly can from them, and try to also help them and try to create some content that hopefully helps us both. So that's kind of the premise of the show.
Yeah, it is worth somebody's time to make it their ambition to meet more and more interesting people over time.
Yeah, you have this idea about making it so that your life gets cooler over time. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, think about it as an exponential graph. Humans are really bad at exponents, but if you can comprehend a little bit about an exponential graph, you can see how small actions can get you big results over time. And so people talk about this in many different fields. They talk about getting 1% better. They talk about dollar cost averaging into the stock market. They talk about, paying off a mortgage little by little. But not many people think about it in terms of just the broad overarching approach to life, where you go, okay, what I am doing right now feels small and insignificant, maybe a little bit pathetic. But if I keep doing it, then my life is going to be unimaginably different 10 years from now. And when you are willing to pick even just a couple of places in your life to make those kinds of small investments over time, your life gets so good, it's really hard to comprehend. And on top of it, your life, you become a bit unstoppable. And what I mean by that is a lot of people approach life where they're like, okay, I have this single goal, I want to accomplish it. And so they aim towards taking a really big step, essentially, right? And so they try to accomplish this really big goal. But the problem with that, I mean, it's good in that it inspires us and it pushes us to action. But the problem with it is if you failed the goal, now it opens the door for you to consider yourself a failure. I mean, yes, there's mindsets around that, but oftentimes we feel like we failed, right? And so what if instead you switched from thinking about these big goals to going, okay, I'm going to continually take small actions that are impossible to fail at. And as I do this, I will develop the skill set of winning. I won't think of it as I need to develop these skills in order to win. I'm going to actually develop the skill of winning. I'm going to win over and over and over again. And when you do that, when you're stacking small wins in that manner, they compound and they turn into momentum. And when you have momentum, you're unstoppable.
What are some ways that you've taken compounding action in your own life, Josh, where you feel like you've done this for yourself?
Daily walks. Daily walks is my favorite basic example. I often say I make daily walks my religion.
Cool.
When I started turning my life around, I was very, very ill. And the short version of that is I couldn't go to the gym. That wasn't an option where you say, oh, I'm going to turn my life around. I'm just going to start hitting the gym every day. That wasn't an option. I was too ill, but I could move, and so I would get myself to walk. I'd just get myself to walk every day, and that was a foundational thing that changed my life. There were many others. It was diet, ways in which I made micro adjustments there until I'd made extreme adjustments. There was money, there was breath work, there was many, many others.
Very cool. Yeah, so in preparation for this interview, I watched your previous interview with one of your coaching clients. But you mentioned some things that stood out to me about your story is you were homeschooled growing up, and then you started going to college at 15. So you went to college from 15 to 22 years old. And I found that to be fascinating. I've got a few questions around that stuff. But the first one is really your content stands out to me on the internet because of the way that you deliver information. The way that you speak, I think, is very, very fascinating. You have this presence about you that I think is unique and fascinating. And I'm wondering if you think that it comes from that upbringing. And so, yeah, that's kind of my question to you is how do you think your upbringing in your life has been different from other people? And how do you think that affects your approach to online content creation?
Yeah, so my upbringing was heavy work ethic, traditional conservative values, traditional conservative church. And when most people think of church these days, they think of conservative, but no, I'm talking conservative church traditional. Many, many more extreme in that direction. And so that was follow the rules, work hard, and everything will work out. And then I became a workaholic and nothing worked out. And so I had to adjust.
Got it.
And
Got it.
so
Cool.
that was the baseline past that resulted in a lot of the way I look at mindset today, and we can go into that further.
Got it. I don't want to pry on this if this is like a difficult thing to talk about, but you mentioned in that interview as well that like your best friend like took his own life during that time and things like and I've recently been going through some things in my life that it feels like my world has kind of imploded a little bit. This past year of my life has been very difficult, and I don't know. I was wondering if you could share some insight around how to rebuild from situations like that are probably extremely devastating.
Yeah, well, first that makes me want to know what's going on in your life. But first, I'll go with mine, which is yeah, he was the only friend who had a memory of me in the crib. And so I'd known this person for a very long time, and he was an incredibly lovable person that, you know, was well liked by everyone. And he chose to take his life, and it was a big turning point for me because I'd always been part of the I'll be happy win crowd. I'd always been part of the well, if we just suffer a little bit longer, then eventually we'll get to the good stuff. And that was showed very concrete proof that sometimes you can just suffer until things end, and you can just suffer, and then that suffering can be so difficult that you can choose to end. And that means I'll be happy when I'll just suffer until I get to the outcome that I desire is not a complete life philosophy. And
Yeah.
so it taught me to start changing what I was doing in a really big way. It taught me to start thinking more about the now. It's taught me to start thinking about how to take practical steps forward in my life that were immediate as opposed to 5, 10 years in the future. And that was really a very big unlock. There's a lot more to it. When I lost him, I was also just wildly inept and a mess myself at that time. That was the point at which I was extremely ill. I was up to my eyeballs in student debt. All the things were bad. You know, when it rains, it pours, and it was snowing. So, so at that point, I went through a realization. If there was any come to Jesus moment for me, it was, oh, you're not doing a good job. you don't know how to do these things that you're trying to do, which is a very different life realization from what you see on the cover of magazines. What you see in most magazines are believe in yourself, or, oh, here's the discovery that the person made that made them truly want to go for the gold. They realized their purpose. And I realized the path to purpose. I realized the path to competence. I realized that I was doing my best to, become a rock star and play in front of 10,000 people when I could, barely get a couple people to come to an open mic with me. I was trying to, pay off my student debts with one check when I couldn't pay my toll bills. And that is a way of looking at life that is healthy delusion when you are aimed in the correct direction.
I love that. Healthy delusion. What would you describe as a healthy delusion? Like, can you give another example of that? Of like, if you were to think laterally about another person's life, like healthy delusion, I think is a fascinating concept.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to rephrase it a little bit. I'm going to rephrase it to useful delusion. And because that makes it very easy to explain examples. So Trump and Kanye West are two examples of people who have utilized delusion, not deleting others, but deleting themselves in incredibly competent ways,
Yeah.
where they believe so much that they are right that nothing can stop them.
Yeah.
And when you are pointed in a direction that if you keep going, it will benefit you, and you engage that level of delusion, it will serve you. But if you are pointed in a direction that if you keep going, it will harm you, and you embrace that level of delusion, it will destroy you. And so if you decide to act on a quick, why can I never pronounce that? If you if you decide to act on a get rich quick scheme and you fully believe in it and it's a scam, it's going to ruin you, right? This is super obvious.
Hmm.
But if you realize that, if you lay one brick on top of the other and you're selling bricklaying and then you slowly scale and you in a diluted manner believe that like there's nothing that can stop you from building this bricklaying company, then it's going to make you build it faster.
I
And
love
so
that.
I was pointed in an unhealthy direction, and I was engaging in those. I was doing my best. I was engaging in these self-development narratives of believe in yourself, of like go for the gold, shoot for the moon, and maybe you'll land among the stars. But the reality is most people who shoot for the moon land in space.
They miss. Yeah. No, I've been there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cold, dark, empty space.
Hmm.
And that's where I was landing over and over again. I was trying to do really big things and I was failing and I was getting nothing from it. And so during that time in my life, I switched worldviews to go, oh, I don't know very much. I'm not very good at the thing that I'm doing. I don't really, I haven't earned the right to shoot for these goals yet. And this is an act of self-love. This isn't saying like you don't deserve these things, you could never have these things. It's just you are approaching this in a really unrealistic manner. And so it enabled me to then ask the question, what could I do? And when I started asking that question, when I started asking what is realistic? What is the small step that I could win at? My life started to turn around.
Very cool. And you started kind of making like imperfect forward progress, and that sort of compounded as we were talking about before with these daily walks and breath work and controlling your diet and things until you were able to kind of like hit exponential returns. That's a very practical actionable way to move forward through life, and I think that that's very fascinating. I really like this idea of like deluding yourself, like brainwashing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried to do that in my own life recently. I specifically, this is corny, and people are judgmental about usage of artificial intelligence, but like with ChatGPT, I found it to be a very useful tool to try to like instill beliefs and mindsets into your life to try to like help you delude yourself into, hey, like if I want my life to look like this, right? Like what are the beliefs and actions that I need to be taking in order for my life to look like this outcome? And so like one thing I've done is I've I really like voice conversations with ChatGPT in the standard voice mode, where I talk about and we try to like work on the beliefs that I hold about myself, right? And I try to focus on the actions that I'm taking to make like as you're describing, like imperfect forward motion. Um, how have you used artificial intelligence in similar ways? Because you in that interview you also mentioned some things about AI, but I haven't really heard much of your thoughts on it aside from that interview. So, what are your thoughts on AI for self development and things like that?
I probably have 3 AI apps open and running right now. I'm using them constantly. I'm never not using them at this point. They're incredibly useful. And yes, ChatGPT is a great tool for implementing healthy self-delusion sometimes. It's interesting, like the hard driving hustle crowd, you'll see them posting on X where it's like, oh, I want ChatGPT is too nice. I want ChatGPT to tell me all of my flaws. I want it to be real with me. And it's like, there's a place for that. That's super useful. But it's also an addictive trap in and of itself. Like people get addicted to pain all the time. And positive, like strategic positive reinforcement is, we know, scientifically proven to be more precise and effective than negative reinforcement. Negative reinforcement enables you to survive. Positive reinforcement enables you to perform. And so you do want to check and find your flaws. That's good because that's how you don't die, right? But if you are just looking at your flaws, then you are looking for what not to do. What not to do is a non-specific piece of data, meaning it doesn't tell you what to do.
Yeah.
What your strengths are, positive reinforcement, what you are doing well, what is working, is precise data. It tells you what to do. And so, by its nature, positive reinforcement enables you to get greater precision than negative reinforcement. And so, while on one hand it's great to see all your flaws, the persistent, almost pathological positivity of ChatGPT can be useful in that it's programmed to most of the time just be wildly helpful and positive and spot all of the good things that you're doing.
Yeah. You've talked a little bit about how there's like two religions, right? There's like Western religion of like try to evolve your life into matching an ideal. And then there's like more Eastern philosophies about like try to be present and develop an awareness of the present moment. And eventually that will kind of compound, as you were talking about, into forward progress. Can you help articulate that idea a little bit more and explain what you mean when you talk about those things?
Yeah, the two basic religions on Earth are, one, look up at the highest good and imagine yourself moving towards it and align yourself with it, and everything will work out. That's Western religion. That's aiming yourself towards following a god. Even the religions with multiple gods and goddesses, they're just metaphorical highest goods across the night sky of your consciousness. The Eastern religion is to sit down on the ground and imagine the smallest possible thing around you. Begin to notice. It's awareness. The first one is vision. The second one is awareness. And when you start to see the things around you, you start to see the matrix of how things interact. You start to see what gets good results and what gets bad results. And if you keep doing this, you're going to develop a worldview, develop sight for how the world is that will in time inform your vision, so that eventually you are so aware and aligned that you are moving in that direction that Western religion likes to start with.
Cool. Let's transition a little bit here to so I look at your life, I look at the business that you've built, Josh, and there's a part of me that's like feels intense jealousy, right? It seems like you like are like
Thanks.
absolutely, man. Like you have a cool life, right? Like it seems like you make content where you talk about ideas that you're extremely passionate about, right? You seem extremely well read, extremely well educated. It seems like you have a diverse like background in different areas and things. One thing I've noticed as you make your content, right, you boil your ideas down into these like clear, punchy sentences, right? And you kind of like, it's almost like Neil deGrasse Tyson. Neil deGrasse Tyson talks about how he like makes these sound bites, right? He realizes he was going on these like news programs and he had to speak kind of in sound bites, clear, ideas that were kind of going to earworm into people's minds. Is that something that you have always done naturally, or is that something that you've developed as you've made more online content?
Oh, I definitely did not do that naturally. My strength is conceptual thinking. I am naturally good at that. But sound bites, no. That took time and practice. And it came actually from being a songwriter. And
Really?
when I was in college, I was majoring in music. And during that time, I got a degree in classical violin performance, but I was also obsessed with and loved songwriting and music composition. And I would write a song every day for months on end. And it taught me to both get even better at concepts, even better at ideation, but it also taught me how to consolidate and make very clear what I was saying. So I have a very kind of unique background in writing and what developed my writing chops.
Wow. When you were writing music, what type of music were you writing? Were you writing like what kind of songs?
Um, so music, like I said, degree in classical violin. Had my first love was film score composition, and so
Cool.
I really loved film scoring, and then songwriting was just general pop indie stuff
Cool.
that
Okay.
just made me happy.
Like acoustic stuff or
So what I ended up doing a lot was violin looping, and I
okay.
would build songs on top of using violin and loop stations.
That sounds
Uh,
fascinating and I want to
yeah.
hear one really bad. You got to send that, man. That's cool.
So if people are like curious, Andrew Bird is kind of like one of the top examples of somebody who used violin and a loop station. Also Kishi Bashi. And then Ed Sheeran did the same thing with guitar. He was the most successful looper on earth, basically. He used loop stations when he began his career.
That is so fascinating to me and I've wanted to the next like thing that I have a background a little bit as a musician, but mostly like vocal stuff, right? And
Mhm.
I don't know if you know this, but like singers are the worst musicians across the board because like like you can get by without learning a ton of music theory, and also like my sight singing is terrible. So I don't know, but I've always wanted to practice like loop pedals and like especially with like the cool soundboards and stuff. And I don't know, something I've always wanted to kind of break into. Do you have any tips for breaking into that?
Yeah, so honestly, if you are a singer and you say what you just said, which is common, yeah, a lot of vocalists are like, yeah, the voice is an instrument, but I don't want to learn any of those technical things that
Right.
all these other musicians playing instruments are doing. I want to sing. Um, so actually, if you want to become incredibly skilled at using your voice, start playing with the loop station with your voice. Just plug your voice into a loop station, and does this practice of you sing something, it records you, and then it plays you back, and then you sing something on top of it. It will require for you to be very precise. Because if there's a single flaw in the first recording, then the next time that you sing over it, it's going to sound wrong. And so you start to get very, very particular about accuracy. And so actually, loop stations are an amazing tool for vocalists.
Fascinating. Do you know Mark Rebellier? I love Mark
Oh
Rebellier.
yeah. Yeah,
He's the
yeah, yeah.
best.
He's great. He's
I've
great.
always wanted to like be able to like have that. I'm obviously I would never get to that level. I don't think, but like it'd be really cool to have some of that. If random,
I remember like coming across Mark on social media like during COVID, and he
yeah,
was, just like
in the
in his
bathrobe.
bathrobe,
Yeah, he's just
just
living. He's doing it.
wailing into his microphone, and
Yeah,
it just became a thing.
yeah.
Man wailing in bathrobe, and he just nailed it. He's so good.
Do you have any that we can move off of this and get back into philosophy and cool business stuff? But if you were just like to recommend like starter gear for me to like mess around with for a couple $100, like do you have any like gear recommendations of like, hey, get this thing?
Honestly, the stuff changes so quickly.
Got it.
But because it changes so quickly and tech has developed so well, really the most effective way, and you can do this for a couple of $100 if you want to get into music. What you do is you just get a MIDI controller and you get Ableton Live, and you just do all of your looping on your actual computer. And so microphone, MIDI controller, and Ableton Live, and you can
And
do
you're
that on
off.
your computer. You no longer need a lot of the pedals that most people use.
Cool. Cool, cool. All right. Let's get back here into some stuff. Okay, so one of the reel that I saw from you that punched me in the gut, right? I'm like, sitting there, like, here's kind of what my life has been like for the last year, right? I went through a thing. I built this. I was working at this business, right? I was in a position where I felt like I had actually like found my life's calling, right? Like I was building this talk show, and I was really good at my job for the first time in my life, right? I graduated in 2018, and since then I just kind of like bounced around from doing my own entrepreneurial businesses to working for other jobs and stuff. And I finally was working for this YouTube company where I felt locked in. And eventually there were some ethical things going on at the business that I just felt extremely uncomfortable about. And I voiced my concerns. And essentially, I was fired from that company. There were some things that happened as well that were, in my opinion, bad faith things that happened. Bad situation. I released a video where I talk about it and I posted it to my YouTube channel. And that video right now has about 2,000 comments where people who I think who are just big fans of that production, are just like writing just the worst, most horrible things possible about me in that comment section. And so that is the first time I have ever dealt with anything like that. And so, Josh, part of me was like, I shouldn't talk about that during this interview, but I also think that you are the type of a person who could provide me guidance that would be very helpful. So I don't know, hearing that story, do you have any thoughts around that as I navigate that part of my life?
Yeah, I made a video that boiled religion down to two primary religions in the entire world, and it got 9 million views. I definitely got hate.
Damn. Okay, yeah. What was that like? How did you deal with that?
Yeah, so I recommend getting a friend who is also a social media content creator and start texting hate comments back and forth to each other and say, hey, I got another hate comment. I've made it.
I
And
love
then
that.
and then get your friend to praise you, to be like, wow, you're a rock star. Look at you getting all of that hate. It's highly effective.
Cool.
Because like it comes with the territory, right? And so you can um you can you can try to escape from it, but that lowers your performance. It stops you from doing the thing that you want to do on the internet. And so it's better to change your response to it. And the way you change your response to it is uh, change your environment. And so for some people that means just not looking at the comments, and that's just their solution, and that changes their environment, and it's good. But for a lot of people, if you just change the way you talk about it, the way you interact with other people about the topic, you can get a couple of friends that understand this game, and you're gonna pretty quickly see it as a mark of pride, where you get hate comments and you're like, ah, this means I'm winning. There's this awesome story. I can't remember who it was. It was a comedian, very famous guy, but he tells this story of he was going through a divorce, and he grew up very, very poor, and he's like near the high point of the divorce process, and he's at this fancy boardroom table at the top of a really big building, and he like looks at his ex-wife across the table, and he's like, wow, she's trying to take my money. And he looks at like all the lawyers around her, like multiple lawyers, and he's like, man, they're trying to take my money too. And then he looks at the lawyer that's defending him, and he's like, he wants my money too. Oh my god, I've made it.
I love that. Yeah.
And so the meaning behind the thing happening to you is pretty important. And so hate comments can mean that you're getting hate, or it can mean that you're making progress.
I love that. That's a very good outlook, and I've heard sentiments like that online. Not, but that is a unique frame to think about them through. Do you have any practical tips and advice for, so like as I'm building my show, as I'm trying to build this thing that I'm describing as the Chryslerverse, right? Which is like, like some YouTubers. I don't know if you ever did this, but I think in your email it talks about like Let's Plays, right? You're like, Josh Terry Plays, I think was the name or something that I saw somewhere, right? I see these YouTubers, everybody wants to start as a Let's Player, right? I'm going to play this type of video game. And what I've realized is that like my Let's Play, I think that the most fascinating thing for me is interesting people and talking to them, right? That is the most interesting game I have ever played in my entire life, is talking to new people and trying to learn about them and trying to like figure out what makes them tick and stuff. And so that's kind of how I'm starting to conceptualize my YouTube channel, is I want to have as many interesting conversations as I possibly can with interesting people from across the internet. Do you have any practical advice on how to put yourself in the same rooms as these people? Because you're like, hey, go find another content creator friend and start texting them the hate comments so that like you can reframe how you view the hate. Well, it's like that sounds great, but at the same time, like most of the connections in my life are people who are not necessarily making tons of content for the internet. And so I'm trying to get into that ecosystem. Do you have any practical advice for how to potentially do stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. The first question is, how do I make people want to come on my show? The second question is, how do I change my network? So to answer the first question, how do I get people to come on my show? What you do is you make it so that it is to another person's benefit to come on your show, right? And
Yeah.
so the way you do that is you make some advantage be available to them, that they get a good thing from coming on your show. And so that could be really good footage. It doesn't mean it has to be I'm getting 100,000 views per interview on my YouTube channel. It can be, I will make sure to get you really good raw footage. And I know you have an editing team and I know you know what to do with this. I will get you the best footage I can. It can be that you are really good at cutting clips. And so you're like, I'll make sure that I cut lots of clips for you. And I'll just send them over and they'll be yours. It's anything that creators are already looking for, anything that influential people are trying to do, you just do it for them. And if you come on my show, it will get done for you. That's
Yeah.
the most effective way to do it. Yeah, I'll pause there. Is that helpful?
That's super helpful. I've noticed that, right? One person that I was kind of associated with was Graham Stephan, and I watched his show, The Iced Coffee Hour, right? And I really thought that the mechanism that he built was so fascinating, right? Because it's like he's building this network of extremely influential people, right? And then he's having like a net positive interaction. Going on the Iced Coffee Hour is fantastic because it helps them build a brand, right? It introduces them to his audience, and then it empowers them with clips, right? I've seen this with like Alex Hormozy's content. I know you're an Alex Hormozy fan, right? It's like he publishes clips from the Iced Coffee Hour to his stuff, and I'm like, that's a really cool mechanism. I'm trying to kind of recreate that in a way where, like, I'm in upstate New York, right? I'm not in Austin. I'm not in California, and so I'm trying to kind of recreate those mechanisms from here. I guess a question for you is like, outside of like, hey, this is really good content, really good footage, are there any other things that you're like, oh, that makes me say yes to an opportunity, right? One thing that I was trying to do is like, hey, I'm going to prepare a really good interview, right? Because that's my background, is kind of like comedy and journalism and connecting with people, right? So I'm going to make sure that I'm going to do my due diligence and study you and make and prepare a really good interview. So that's one angle that I've taken. Do you have any other things of like, oh, that makes me say yes to opportunities all the time?
Yeah, so the one that you just stated is actually a pretty difficult one because a lot of people won't trust that statement without proof. And so they want that one backed up with like views and stuff like that.
Hmm.
The footage thing is more provable. It's more like, and you can do it even without views. That's why I said it.
Yeah.
The other things you can do are get really good at introducing people to people. And so, like if you have had a couple great people on your show and you can introduce them to other people who would like to meet them, that's another really big benefit. So, building your network up as much as possible, keeping track of them, uh, I got to find a way to get back in touch with Robert Greene. I had him on my podcast and I lost his contact info.
No, that's not good.
I mean, this is Robert Greene.
Yeah, no, Robert Greene's the GOAT. I love Robert
Yeah.
Greene. Yeah,
Yeah, and
48
like
Laws of
that's
Power,
not
dude.
something that
Oh,
an author at his level is gonna, randomly say, call me up when your book is ready. But he said that to me,
yeah.
and I don't have his contact info.
Well, you
And
know what? Look desperately into the camera right now, and we can make a clip out of this. We could say, Robert, like, please send Josh your email again, right? And then also, Robert, if you ever want to come on my show, I will make the best interview ever, dude. Like, let's go, man.
yes, so if anybody can put me back in touch with Robert, get me back in there.
Fantastic. I love that. Thank you, Josh, for letting me bug you about. I don't know. I feel weird about being like,
No, it's a good question, and it's a question that should be asked. And let me answer your other question, which
yeah,
is how do I build my network? And the way you do that is you just throw events. And it doesn't matter if you're in some place that's not a hub, right? I'm in a hub. I'm in Austin. It's great. If somebody wants to come to one of my creator events, reach out because I throw them pretty regularly. But if you're in a more remote area, you just have to throw a kind of wider net, right? I get to reach out to people in the Austin area. You reach out to people within several cities around. Be willing to even travel to throw the event in a specific city that's maybe more conducive to it. But try to find content creators that are in your area, because in-person social stuff makes it a lot easier. And then also you can start online communities. There's a lot of content creator discords out there and things like that. And when you get involved with those things, you do get results. You are able to network and change your environment, get more positive reinforcement in the right places, and get connections that would want to be on your podcast, things like that.
cool. Thank you so much, Josh. I appreciate that, like, practical advice. And I'm going to, the other thing that I love about the show is that, like, I can re-listen to these conversations. I sat down with Christo and he gave me a bunch of personalized advice that, like, I directly applied to my show. He's like, Noah, just focus on the basics, right? He's like, you're trying to do all these complicated things. And he said it in a very polite way where he wasn't like, telling me what to do, but he was essentially saying some people don't focus on the basics and they really mess up stuff. And so it's like, he kind of like let me connect the dots on my own. So that was super helpful, but I'm going to do all those things. Thank you very much, Josh.
Content creation is one of my areas. Like I help
Wonderful.
people, grow their audiences and grow their businesses and grow their relationships. Like those are the three fundamentals. And it's mostly grow their audiences and grow their businesses. So like I have many clients that are specifically social media content creators. Like that's who I serve.
Got it.
So I'm happy to answer questions about
Got it.
content
Wonderful.
and content
Thank
creation.
you so much. I'm sorry if that was I think that actually is a perfect transition to the next topic here, which is leveraging your uniqueness to build a business, right? So
Wonderful.
as I was listening to interviews with you, right, I learned about your background, right? You said that you were in college from 15 to 22 years old, right? I think that is absolutely fascinating. There's a Steve Jobs quote where he talks about how he was in a calligraphy class and that affected the typefaces on the Mac, right? And it was something that Windows hadn't even considered, right? And so this like lateral thinking of like this thing that was previously unrelated to computers, like now the style was able to affect the typefaces on the Mac. Do you have things like that from your life? We've talked about a few of them, but do you have any other examples of like this part of my life affected what I do in my business now?
Yeah, so college and my education in general gave me the raw material to utilize to grow a business. It did not teach me anything about how to make money or to build a business. I mean, nothing. Not the business classes, none of it. It was incredibly unhelpful, in fact, and quite destructive in that direction. Um, eh, but it gave me raw skills. And so the songwriting that I described, my writing abilities serve me every day in what I do. And it gave me a wide knowledge base because I just liked to study. And so during that time, not only was I in college for that period of time, I was taking generally double the course load of what a normal student would take the entirety of that time and getting almost straight A's the whole time. So I
Wow.
was just soaking up knowledge because I was a sponge and that's what I did. And the ways it served me poorly was it got me hyper focused on just learning and working, and it did not help serve me and building my life the way that I wanted to build it. But the way in which it did serve me was it gave me tons of raw material of skill sets to lean on when I started to steer myself in a better direction.
Very cool. Um, do you have any advice for when you started building that business, when you started to draw on that set of knowledge? Was it scary to you, right? Was it scary to go out on your own, or do you feel like you've always kind of been blazing your own path and that sort of thing? Like, it seems like you've kind of carved out your own life that is very different than a lot of other people. Has that been a comfortable experience the whole time? Because I can't imagine it has been.
The fear of poverty is not very comfortable. And facing reality, when I finished college and I was dropped into the real world, I often say one of the saddest days of my life was graduation day. When I realized that I had just kind of had my head in this hole of learning, and I actually wasn't learning the things that would serve me. And I just got a manual labor job right out of college, and was very unsuccessful for a very long time and up to my eyeballs in student debt. Also, speaking about that small improvements over time, I to give you an idea of how small those improvements were is I actually paid off the entirety of my student debt while still living on the poverty line. It took me a very long time to learn how to increase my income and to build a business and to become that type of man who could do those types of things. I like to say my post-secondary education was, or post-collegiate education was the Tim Ferriss show. I listened to that podcast to and from work for years, listened to every single episode. Literally went from the beginning and caught up on the Tim Ferriss show, which if you've never done that, that's quite a project.
Yeah, that dude cranks it out. Like that guy, yeah, for sure. Tim Ferriss is
Yep.
awesome. 40-hour work week, 4-hour work week, great book.
Yep,
Everybody's
4 Hour
read that.
Work Week,
Yeah.
phenomenal book. And so that was kind of where I started to learn about business, and I started to learn about how I could do that. And I was, like I said, I had a manual labor job for a long time, and then I became a music teacher, and I was a music teacher for 7 or 8 years. And I was trying to make little businesses. I was trying to become a rock star. I was trying to do all sorts of things. And all of it was scary and all of it was unsuccessful. And over time, then I went through a process of self-improvement, like I described, with the small steps. I developed competence in small ways as opposed to the big ways. I developed the ability to, look at my life and be realistic. And, I paid off all that debt. And I got to this place where I saw the world more clearly. And I had built a life that I was comfortable with, where I was healthy and I was doing well. I wasn't rich. I was still had very low income. Um, and but I had a life that I was proud of. And I remember taking a walk and thinking, "Oh, I don't need to be famous anymore." Like that I'm no longer hyper attached to these giant objectives. And I went viral that month because that's how the universe works.
Cool. As soon as
Um,
you release the need for it, you essentially
yeah.
freed yourself up to kind of like act and find a flow
Yep.
almost.
Yeah. And then over time, I started to build a business off of social media. And it was very slow, very gradual. When I realized, okay, this is what I'm going to be doing, I went to listen to a bunch more uh, uh, business podcasts, and I listened to 200 episodes just to make sure I knew what I was talking about, and then realized, oh God, I know all of this stuff already.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
This
weird how
is a
that works.
problem.
Yeah.
This is a problem, and so it's time for me to get to work.
I love it.
Um, and so I'm very much in a build and create phase as opposed to a consume phase of life now. I often feel that creativity and consumption sort of is like tides of the ocean. It kind of there's times for information and things to flow into you, and there's a time for information and ideas and construction to flow out of you. And I'm very much in a creative phase. I'm very proud to say that you know somebody when I meet somebody out in the world and they're like, "Wow, you do amazing stuff, and you make me think of this author. Have you read this book?" I just say, "No, I have no idea. I've never read that book. Sorry."
Cool.
And for years, that felt difficult. I felt bad for not knowing the next new thing. But knowing the next new thing is not what helps you build. Focusing on what you can do is what helps you build. And so I've done that now I've been in that phase for about 10 years.
Very cool.
I'm 35, and like 15 to 25 was sort of a learning phase, and 25 to 35 has kind of been a building phase.
Very cool. Let me ask you a practical question here. That's very relevant to this. I am I am building my own little audience here, and I'm building my own community, right? This is my Patreon wall of fame, right? Recently, one of my Patreon members, we've been experimenting over there, making behind the scenes content and stuff. One of them sent me a long letter about essentially it boiled down to, hey, my friend frequently gambles and he asks me for money all the time, right? And this person kind of asked me for advice. And so I recorded a 20-minute video where I explained my thought process on this. And I've watched that video back and I'm like, I actually have some decent advice and things to say during that, right? Then I found myself like promoting that on Instagram, and I immediately like discounted my advice and my perspective, right? And I looked at my promotion for that and I'm like, wow, like I wouldn't subscribe to my Patreon, because the way I frame it is like, oh, hey, if you want the advice of a moronic 29-year-old, like go visit my Patreon, right?
Yeah.
Then I heard your idea about rubber band theory and about these types of ideas, and about like I don't know. Can you share some ideas? What does that anecdote make you think of?
Yeah, so first, let me share rubber band theory. So the rubber band theory is this idea that if you are um, struggling and you're down in the dumps, and let's say you're wildly overweight, way past the point where you think you should be, right? You have a self-image and you are overweight past that level. There's an immense amount of tension pushing you to change, because you are not what you perceive yourself to be, and you don't like it. And so it's like a rubber band has been pulled downward, and there's tension that's pulling you upwards. But if you start to extend, if you let's say you lose that weight and you get to the point where you look kind of like what you perceive yourself to be as, like the story of what's acceptable, what other people won't shame, what other people will find attractive, things like that. And you want to keep going, like let's say you've lost the weight but you don't have visible abs, that phase, that is now going to actually be creating tension that pushes you downward from that goal of, let's say, visible abs, because your reality is that you're that person. And when you start to push upwards beyond it, it starts to feel like a different sort of impossible, right? When you are super overweight, it feels like, oh, this is impossible for me to remain this way. I should not remain this way. When you start to push up above your reality, you start to feel it's impossible for you to keep going, because this isn't me. And so the only way to permanently make a shift is to change your reality, to go, this is the new me. This is how I operate. And so to go to your example of, I gave some good advice and now I am being sort of a little bit demeaning of my own advice. I'm kind of talking down to myself. I'm being self-deprecating when I share this, and I say, oh, well, it kind of helps, but you might want to talk to somebody else about this, which is not very useful. You have to go through a process of accepting that what you have done is good. So there's a form of acceptance that solves this. And you have to also, at the same time, and this is a part a lot of people miss, take on the responsibility for sharing good information. And so what this is instead of like there's kind of two main camps in the self-development world, and let's call them the self-love crowd and the responsibility crowd, or the self-love crowd and the sacrifice crowd. And the self-love crowd constantly talks about you can do it, believe in yourself, you deserve it, everything's okay. And the responsibility self-sacrifice crowd says earn it, you don't deserve it until you do, you'll never deserve it, keep going. If you don't do this action, then everything will be ruined, so you have to take this action. And the reality is if you combine those, you can usually create a pretty good life. And so when it comes to not talking down to yourself and being willing to advertise yourself, you have to take a little bit of time to say, I did a good job, I deserve it, I earned this, and I am competent, I've gotten there. And then on the other side, you have to say, look, I've taken on the responsibility to help others. If I am self-deprecatory towards myself, I don't know if that's even a word, but we're going with it. Then other people will not respond to these words in a way that will serve them. It is my job to serve them. And so I am being irresponsible by talking down about myself. I am insulting my own self-help. I am insulting my own advice. And that is incredibly destructive. And one of the ways that this is really, really apparent is in relationships. So we all know a woman wants the best man that she can get. And that's a good and it's a healthy thing. It's a good to have a good man. And so a lot of men, they realize that and they go, okay, I get it. I have to earn it. And then they do a whole bunch of the camp that I was describing of the responsibility and sacrifice narratives.
Mhm.
And the way they do it is they just talk down to themselves, like you're fat, get in the gym again. Otherwise you won't be the kind of man that that your woman wants. What those men often miss, though, is that if you are demeaning yourself, then you are demeaning that which she is in a relationship with. And so if your only language is to be destructive towards yourself in order to force yourself to be better, then, and that's your only tool, then the net end result she will get a lesser man. Because you will have made yourself less by talking down to yourself. And so, no, you are not, a man is not going to get to the place that he wants to be by just constantly being, self-loving and happy all the time about how, yeah, you deserve it, everything's wonderful. But if your entire narrative is earn it, you miserable worm, then you will not have the high self-belief and hold yourself in a way that makes you attractive. And so what you have to do is you have to tell yourself to earn it, tell yourself to do the hard work and be willing to take on responsibility and take the sacrifice, but then also realize that it is your responsibility to love yourself. It is your responsibility to not talk down to yourself. It is your responsibility to hold yourself high and consider yourself well, because that will turn you into the person that she wants you to be. And it's the same thing when you try to take an action. It's the same thing when you try to make a sale. When you make a sale, you need to deliver a good product. And part of the way that people get themselves to deliver good products is they, see all the flaws in their product. But if you go into a sale and you try to close somebody on all of your flaws, it's not going to work. And so you're going to have to also understand that what you have is good. What you have to offer is good. And this combination is actually pointing to the fundamental paradox of self-development. This is often considered to be the fundamental paradox, which is, how do I love myself and still understand that I need to be better? How do I do those two things? How do I accept myself as I am and improve? They seem conflicting, but they're really just two polarities that when you insert both of them into your life, life gets good. When you see the flaws in your product and you're willing to make them better, and you see the advantages of your product and you're willing to close somebody on those advantages to tell them, look, this is good, then you can have a business. You can't survive on just making product better, and you can't survive on just saying, this is the most amazing thing ever. Yeah, I know all the reviews say that it's shit, but you still should buy it because it's fantastic. Neither of those plans work. You have to combine the two. And it's a very interesting thing. Once you see it, you can kind of see the matrix that this applies all over the place. And since I brought it up, the fundamental paradox of self-development, I'll answer it. The question, how do you love yourself and still be better? How do you accept yourself as you are and then grow? How do you make sense of that paradox? Very simply, think about a kid. If you were taking care of and raising a child, would you tell a 12-year-old that they're a moron because they can't do what the 13-year-old does? Well, unless you're a really terrible person, that is not how you go about doing so. You accept that they're 13 and they aren't 14, and it is totally reasonable for a 13-year-old to have the skill sets that they do, and for them to have not developed the thing that is expected of them at 14, and then help them along the way. And what this is to simply look at life as, here we go back to one of the most core common wisdoms, life is a journey, it's not a destination. If you think of life as a destination, then you cannot handle the paradox of self-development. If you think of life as a destination, you cannot handle the paradox of how do I accept myself as I am and be better. But if you understand that life is a journey, then it becomes very, very obvious that where you are is fine and you're on a journey. And so of the journeys that you would choose, why not choose the I'll be better one? That's a good journey. That's a good story. That's the hero's journey. And so that's how you make sense of the paradox, is you just think of how you would raise a child and then start treating yourself the same way. You don't start the child on the highest water slide at the water park. You start by just getting their toes in the water, and then you go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Josh, let me bring it back to a place of like practicality, right? Thank you for sharing those perspectives. I think that that's fascinating, and I think that it's very valuable. When you bring yourself
help, what do I do?
Kinda, yeah. It's like, yeah, it's like, I don't know. That's always where I'm at. It's like, part of me is like, I love this like philosophical lens, but it's also like, I'm a monkey and like, I have to pay my bills, like, and so like, I don't know.
Yes.
That's kind of what I juggle in my life.
No, that's the perfect question to come next.
Yeah.
And so let's lay it out.
So hold on a second. Before we do that, I want to talk from I love like personal anecdotes and personal stories. That's how I learn. Is like, beginning, middle, end of like, this is what I experienced, and this is how I changed as the hero in the journey, right? So my question to you is, can you bring yourself back to like your first coaching client, and can you tell me like that story, right? Like, how did you find that person? And then potentially like, what beliefs were in your mind? Like, what were you thinking about during that time? And like, how do you think those beliefs changed like as you built your coaching practice, right? If you could give that guy a belief that like enabled him and set him up for success, if you could give that hero a sword to go slay the dragon of, hey, build this awesome coaching business, what belief would you instill in your former self?
I'm going to do you one even better than that. I'm going to go even more detailed and more actionable than get your first coaching client.
Okay.
I'm going to go to the first CTA.
Okay.
The first time you post on the internet, hey, buy my stuff.
Yeah.
Because I'm good at stuff and it'll help you.
Sure. Tough to do for me anyway. It's like,
yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
It's super tough.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, the way I did it was I laid on the floor for 8 hours first and panicked. That's how I did it.
Cool. All right. Dope. Do you have
Yeah.
any recommendations for like how to lay on the floor for 8 hours?
Yeah. So the reason why I had to lay on the floor for 8 hours in panic was because I again set too high of an expectation. Right? I I'm a person who's very self-conscious about what he has to offer. It means, by the way, that what I have to offer is very good. I'm one of the best in the world at what I do.
I
And
love
I
that
had to
framing.
learn that.
Yeah.
I had to learn that. But I am also still a person who's very conscious about, like, am what I'm offering, is it okay? Is it good? I'll overthink it even to this day. And it's like you're talking to the perfect person for this particular thing. And I'll tell you what I struggled with was I just set too high of an expectation for what my offer was going to be. And so what I mean by that is when I was panicking for 8 hours, laying on my floor, trying to amp myself up to advertise my business, thinking that I needed to make, some fancy 3-minute video about how great I am and all my client testimonials and all the bullshit that, anybody who listens to a single Russell Brunson podcast is going to know. And for somebody who is self-conscious about what they have to offer, that's just too much. That's just too overwhelming. And so what you instead need to do is get in the practice of posting the smallest possible thing that calls people to action, that calls people to buy things from you, that you can do effectively. And so that might be one sentence, right? It might be a single post on Instagram that's a single panel that says, hey, I made good thing. You should get it.
Sure. Yeah.
And by the way, people like that way more anyways.
Yeah. It's just being
Um,
honest. Hey,
yeah,
I busted my ass. This is really good, and I know my shit. And like I like really put it in. Like, yeah. I
yeah.
love the
Well, it's
framing.
not
Yeah.
just that. It's that we're actually inundated with effective marketing. I say that in quotes. We're inundated with people marketing to us now at this point, with all of the techniques that everybody knows now, and
Mm-hmm.
we're all sick of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so when somebody just says, hey, I made good thing, come get it, it's actually very refreshing.
Yeah.
And you can't build an entire business off of that, but you can start a business off of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you should be doing. And then what you do is you do that until you can do something better. Again, this actually goes back to the two religions. One is look up at the highest thing, look up the highest goal, and the other is do the smallest thing you can do. Right? That's kind of the essence
Yeah.
of the two concepts. And most people are freezing because they're obsessed with one or the other. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody is either obsessed with the smallest thing and they never grow because they aren't willing to take bigger steps, or they're obsessed with the high bar and they feel like they should do something really big and they can't do it, and so they freeze. And so if you are struggling to get a thing done, you need to ask yourself, do I need to take a bigger step or a smaller step? It's really about as simple as that. And so in your case, you probably need to take a smaller step.
Yeah. Of just like, hey, yeah, because I mean, that's a really good point. I think that right now there are revenue generation mechanisms in my business that already exist. And instead of like, oh, like, I don't know, I think I always constantly, my perfectionism is like, I'm going to make the best, but literally the project that swirls around in my brain is like, I'm going to make an AI library where like, if somebody talked to my little agent, like you could help them do enough self-discovery that it's going to like fundamentally transform their lives. And they're going to like, date the girl and get the dream job and like, buy a house and 2.5 kids and a fence. And it's like, no, like sometimes it's just like, hey, like I post funny stuff on Patreon and it's $5 and it helps me. If you want to help me, go do that. Like that's good enough for now, and eventually I don't know, because you don't build the perfect agent overnight that's going to make everybody have the best life ever.
Yeah,
So
so if anybody listening to this has been interested in my work, and they like what I'm doing, go to my Instagram and DM me the word space, and I will send you the best space western work playlist on Spotify that
hell yeah.
you'll ever get.
Hell yeah.
This has nothing to do with anything that I have to offer. And also, I have a background in film scoring and decades of education in the music world. And I was coding a personality test, which you can get at polaritysystems.com. And it is the basis of my work. But I was coding a personality test, and I like to listen to music when I code. And I've always loved space westerns. And I couldn't find a good space western playlist. So I spent a bunch of time in between AI generations picking the songs, and I now have the most epic, awesome 8-hour space western playlist on Spotify. So DM me the word space on Instagram, and yeah, it's great.
I've listened to it. I did that, and it's really good. It is really
amazing.
good. I listened to it on my skateboard. It's pretty cool. I love it, Josh. I've got like 2 more segments here. But we don't. If you've got a heart out, are you flowing? You feeling good? Or
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Here we go. Cool. Building your own machine, systems, actions, habits, books, mindset, high leverage inputs. I think this is going to be. Let's focus here. You seem like someone who reads a lot, right? Primarily like sci-fi, philosophy, personal development. What are a few books that you revisit a lot that you think more people should read?
My favorite nonfiction book is The Art of Learning by Josh Waitzkin. It's awesome. Everybody should read it. It's not very well known. Josh Waitzkin has been on like 2 podcasts because he doesn't need to be on podcasts, but he was on like the first or second podcast of Tim Ferriss, and he was a big influence on what I do now. He kind of gave me permission to, in a lot of ways, to start the business that I started. If there was anybody that I would want to, put a signature on my book, it would be him. He's amazing. And then I'm a big fan of fiction. I've actually learned a lot from fiction, and I love sci-fi. I super recommend Heinlein and Asimov, two of the fathers of modern science fiction. They're incredible writers. You can learn so much from them. And then Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy definitely made my life better. And then there was one other one that I wanted to mention. I'm reading it right now. It is the best fantasy book I have ever read. It's like Game of Thrones but more fun, and teaches you things. Like it's wildly good. The Black Prism by Brant Weeks is just incredible series. That's the first book of the series. Incredible series. So
there's a podcast that I love called Almost Friday. They have like a duo comedy podcast, and he does a bit where he talks about the Black Prism because he loves that book series, and he has like this like super in-depth character where he's like he knows everything about that.
It's so good because it's the only book I've ever seen where they take a side character and they make him the main character. Like he takes the fat kid archetype that's often like the bumbling side character.
Sure.
And he makes him the lead character.
That's cool.
And then it shows the narrative of this kid that's like this struggling social outcast that's always bumbling and messing things up and can't control his mouth, and and he's overweight, and he's just got all these self-image issues, and it shows him becoming the man that he could be, and then also working through the self-image of what he was to what he is now. It's just an incredible story, and it's like a great adventure fantasy, awesome magic system, all the other fun things. But it's cool to have such an incredible story tied in with really an amazing narrative of personal growth.
That sounds fantastic, and I think that I will check that out immediately. I hope there's a really good audiobook because
Yep. Also, I'm doing the audiobook. It's
wonderful.
It's
very
great.
Cool. There are so many more things that I want to talk to you about because you're so fascinating to me, and I think you're so cool. You were talking about how like you had like aphantasia a little bit, right? Like you struggle to hold things in your mind's eye, which I think is fascinating because I also do the same. Like
aphantasia.
Yeah, aphantasia is the idea that you lack a sophisticated mind's eye. Not to insult your mind's eye, I bet it's great, but
Yeah, thank you, thank you. No, I haven't heard that term, but yeah, I have trouble with specificity. And so I have an incredible memory for concepts, but I have a very weak memory for details. And I've worked on it for years and years, but it seems to be just a little bit of my nature. There might be some solutions out there I've been working on recently. I'm also extremely high anxiety, high stress. Um, like I'm a very happy person and I'm living a great life and all of that. But I did so with the difficulty of just extremely high tension. If you plug electrodes into my brain, it will say that I have what was it? Somebody plugged some electrodes into my brain. They went, "Oh, you have the tension levels of an active service member."
wow.
And I was like, that's your just your baseline." I was like, "Oh, all
Oh
right,
my
that
God.
explains a lot."
Sure.
And apparently, when you have really high levels of tension, it can affect your memory. And so I'm that would be like the next life change for me is to be able to do that. But hey, by the way, everybody, you can achieve this level of self-love and life enjoyment while still dealing with incredible things.
High
Yeah,
levels of stress.
yeah, high
Fascinating.
levels of stress. It can be okay.
So, Josh, one thing that I'm trying to do here with this show is like create, again, it's called the Chryslerverse, right? Chrysler's my last name, and I'm trying to like create kind of like this cast of characters that like are real people in my real network, but also like, you know, like nodes to my community of like, oh, like that person is known for those types of things and things. So I have two questions around this. The first one being like, how do you want to be seen and perceived in as a member of the Chryslerverse? Is there a character that you're like, oh, this guy is awesome and I want to kind of be like that person? And then the other question is like from a very practical standpoint, like what are things that I can help you with, right? Are there certain types of people that you want to be introduced to? Are there things like where do you want to go in your life and what opportunities can I like how can I help you? Those are my two
Oh,
questions for you.
thank you. Well, just in general, um, I am a coach and I help business owners build wealth and audiences through mindset, strategy, and practical next steps. And I am a content creator and a writer, and my name's Josh, and that's what I do. And if I were to be known in the Chryslerverse, I hope it would be as a thinker and a writer, and somebody who helps kings do better. Actually, if we want to do Chryslerverse, that's fun. Let's do it the fun way. So I like to take on the archetype of the magician.
Love it.
So the archetype of the magician, I consider myself to try to embody the archetype of the king in my home life and the archetype of the magician in my work life. And what I mean by that is the archetype of the magician is the counselor to kings. And the magician has a very interesting spot in being able to help out kings is because a king needs a counsel. It's very important. But to have a good counsel, you need somebody that is kind of your equal in a lot of ways, but also not your competitor.
Mm-hmm.
And a magician is somebody who has established a high level of competence in a field that is totally different from your kingdom, right? He doesn't care about your kingdom. He cares about, I mean, he might care about the kingdom, but he doesn't care about ruling your kingdom. He cares about other things,
Mm-hmm.
right? His zone of genius is in a different place. And so that mindset has always worked very well for me. And the way that I work with high performers and work with, really powerful individuals is, look, I've found my own zone of genius is I'm a good counselor. I help people reach higher heights. I help people, strategize in ways that they could never strategize on their own. And also, I'm not a threat. I'm not going to take your business plan.
Right. Right.
I live in a different world than you do. But when we work together, we get to much much higher heights, much greater position. And so, yeah, I'm the magician.
I love that. That's sick. Yeah, one thing that it's so funny because like I think of myself, I don't use the word magician, I use the word wizard, right? Like it's
Nice.
I really like wizard. Wizard's fun for me.
Wizard's
Um,
fun. because it's
And
fun.
as I
So the
yeah,
way I can get help is yeah, shoot anybody over to me that might want to have me on their podcast.
okay.
That'd be great. You know, content creation is the way. Feed the content dragon. Any cool clips we can make would be awesome. And yeah, if anybody's interested in working with me, find me on Instagram at Josh Terry Plays.
Love it. Josh Cherry plays. Cool. So mainly what you're looking for is additional content creation platform opportunities, and then also potentially clients. If I find somebody who I'm like, hey, Josh Cherry's the guy. Like, you need a wizard or you need a magician on your council. Boom, hit up Josh. Well, cool, Josh. Thank you so much for coming on. Do you have anything else that you want to promote? You said that you're releasing a book, correct? Like,
Yeah, so the cool thing that I've done recently is the personality test. I've taken 5 years of coaching elite performers, and I've realized that over those 5 years, I was asking them specific questions and putting them into specific buckets. And once I had them in those buckets, I knew exactly what to do with them. And so as a result, I then codified that and I turned it into a personality test. This is a different test from the way most people do personality tests. This is not a general personality. This is specifically how your personality relates to take an action and what makes you take action. And so it's a 16 type categorization across multiple polarities of like what are the specific environmental experiences and mental experiences that make you do stuff. So just redesigned it. Now you can take it for free. It's a fantastic resource. And yeah, if you're interested, go to polaritysystems.com and take the test and
very cool.
have fun.
PolaritySystems.com. Cool. I have more questions about that. Do you mind if we do 2 minutes
Yeah,
on this? Because I want
go
to learn
for it.
about it. Cool. What polarities do you measure? Like, what do you think are the biggest indicators of personality that you specifically focus on in this test? And what do you think that is the utility of understanding yourself through the framework that you present?
Yeah, so I measure people across a series of pillars that it's completely different from what most people use, which is I measure people across vision, awareness, pain, pleasure, internal boundaries, external boundaries, pressure, and vacuum. And so what this looks like is vision and awareness is the way you look at the world. And some people look at the world through a very focused lens, and some people look at the world through a very broad lens. And the way you look at the world affects the actions that you take. And then the next one, pain and pleasure, we all know that the two ways you can get yourself to do something is either to add pain or add pleasure, right? Move away from pain or move towards pleasure. But what is not talked about is some people are more pleasure oriented and some people are more pain oriented. And so when they feel pain in their life, they tend to take action. Others shut down. Like I don't know how common. It's so common to hear people talk about like, oh, you gotta feel the pain in order to get the thing done. But it's like, yeah, what about the 50-60% of society that when they feel pain, they actually just start to get in resistance? Because that's a very large portion of society. The answer for everybody is not just feel the pain. The response really, there's a very large portion of people that are stick people, and there are a very large portion that are carrot people, and so it measures that that metric. And then the next one, internal versus external boundaries. Internal boundaries is how you can control your internal environment, your own mind, and your own behavior. External boundaries is how you can control and how much control you have of the environment around you, how well you're able to interact with others, right? Some people are good at saying no to themselves, self-discipline. Others are they have almost no self-control, and they're really good at saying no to others. And those are very, very different people. And if you have amazing external boundaries, and you're great at saying no to others, for example, and you decide you want to be a painter, and you need to show up every day alone in a workshop to paint, things might not go well because you might not have that level of self-discipline, and you maybe should be in sales. You might have more fun networking, right? And then on the other side, if you have a really hard time saying no to people and you're amazing at controlling your own behavior, you probably shouldn't get a job in sales. That probably isn't your spot.
Mhm.
And so if you know whether you're internally or externally controlling your world, you have a much better shot at success. And then the last one is kind of my particular, I guess, uh, offering to the knowledge that people talk about in the self-development space. So we all know about pressure. Everybody knows, oh yeah, you gotta, set a deadline in order to accomplish things. We gotta feel the pressure in order to get things done. But we all know that this is another like proven thing in self-development is every time as you grow, every time you learn a concept, eventually the opposite of that concept becomes true. So an example of this is, let's say you learn patience. If you learn patience, eventually you need to learn when to basically be impatient. You have to learn when to say enough is enough. We need to get this done. If you learn, let's say, aggression, eventually you need to learn kindness. If you learn to set a hard boundary, eventually you need to learn when to let go, right? Anytime you're in a growth process, when you learn one thing, eventually you need to learn the opposite thing. And the self-development world is obsessed with putting pressure on an individual in order to accomplish something. But what's the opposite of pressure? It's a vacuum. And so the last component of the test measures people on whether or not they respond with action to pressure or the release of pressure. Because some people actually take action when they have free time. Believe it or not.
Yeah.
Sounds crazy.
Yeah.
But some people get more done when they have free time. Other people get more done when they have a deadline and there's no free time and everything's under pressure. But they're different people. Yes, you can learn the skills of doing both, but we do have basic ways in which we operate better. And so the test measures people to find out which ways they operate better and helps people take more action.
I think that that's fantastic. I resonate with so many of those ideas because like as I have tried to build my life, like I'm finally done trying to like conform and contort to the world, and I'm trying to instead just like figure out the way that I personally make my way through this world, right? And I've realized that like as you've been describing these things, it's like I am this person. You talked about like when people are under pressure, when people are under deadlines, when people are like under, you used a specific term that I don't remember, but it was I've realized that like my conceptualization of myself, I think I work best as like a pirate, right? Like a pirate does not have like, like set regimented like things that he does all the time. Like a pirate, like, like he just lives his life and like, he adapts to the ocean and then like, there's a parrot and like, and he's like going like, it's like my life works the best when I am just like momentum based and I am just like in chaos, right? Moving from one thing to the next. And it's like, I'm doing so many different things, but like my level of overall output is so much higher when I'm just like, oh, I'll go for a bike ride. Like, and then like as I'm on the bike ride, I will, voice record and then like take the transcript and then use that to build a thing, right? And it's like, wait, that's like that just works for me. Instead of this, well, you have to work, because when I was building my original business, it was like you have to work from 9 to 5 every single day, right? And it's like, well, cool. If that means that I have to sit at a desk and do that, it's hell to me, right? So
Yeah,
instead,
it's
yeah,
correct. That's correct. And it's because people tend to get the best results when they are in what's called alignment, right? And that's what I really at its core teach people is how to get aligned with what you're doing. Like that's the core of my work when I'm helping people. If it's I'm working with a business, I'm helping the business get aligned. If I'm helping an individual, it's the same. And for some people, being aligned means I have a schedule that feels good to me and I stick to that schedule. And that commitment is a core value for me. And this pattern is a core thing that creates security in my life. And that's what makes me feel strong. And if that is aligned for you, awesome. That's what you should be doing. And then for some people, it makes them feel miserable and it sucks. And it doesn't mean those people are undisciplined. It means that they have different patterns that work for them. And sure, you've got to examine and find out if you are undisciplined, because some people are, right? And that's a skill set you've got to learn. But if you know how to get yourself to do things, and you've learned that skill, which is the essence of discipline, if you learned how to get yourself to do things, and every time you do the exact same pattern over and over and over again for 3 months, you feel like hell, then maybe those patterns suck. Maybe that's not what you should be doing. And so when somebody feels better, when they have a work style where they wake up and they start to work and they're like, I'm going to go for a bike ride now. And they just jump on the bike and then they go back and they go do the next thing. The reason why that results in high performance, just like extreme pattern discipline type of thing can result in high performance, is because when a person does that in a way that is aligned, they are in their power. Right? Because what it is like, for somebody who wants to live that way, let me explain it this way. For somebody who doesn't want that kind of random behavior, they feel strong when they are able to control their behavior into a pattern where it's like, I'm going to do this thing over and over and over again, and that's how I'm going to get success. But some people, that makes them feel weak because it makes them feel like they can't do the thing that they want to do. Right? And so if somebody has the pattern of I'm gonna work for a little while and you know what, I want to ride my bike, and they go ride their bike and then they come back and sit back down to work when they feel like it, that makes them feel strong because they're like, I do what I want.
Yeah.
And when I do what I want, I do powerful things. And so the goal here is to take the human machine and get them to do the most powerful thing that they can possibly do. And so if that makes you feel powerful, if it makes you feel powerful to step away and do other things and to mix up your schedule and to move it in the way that feels right so that you are doing the thing that you want to do that is the most aligned, then every single time you take an action in your business, it's going to be a thing that you want to do. And when you do that, it's going to be the right thing. It's going to be super powerful, and you're going to be able to do it with just way more oomph. You're gonna be able to leverage yourself in a much bigger way than if you are hyper controlling yourself.
Yeah. And it works too. I mean, yesterday I've done this thing where I've tried to be like, I'm going to work 9 to 5 and whatever. And it's like, yesterday I worked for over a 12-hour day, and it was exciting, right? And I got so much done, and it's like, and I'm constantly posting to Instagram, right? And other people would be like, well, that's a distraction, right? I really like Alex Hormozy, and I listen to a lot of Alex Hormozy stuff, and he's like, okay, turn off your phone, close, making sure the room is dark, and then put on and then kind of, he doesn't really say this, but what I'm assuming he means is take an Adderall and and then he does nicotine so that he focuses on his computer.
Lock in.
And it's cool. If I do that for a week, I will not make it the whole week, and I'll have suicidal thoughts around day 3. So it's not for me.
And it doesn't mean you can't do that behavior. It just means you need a different pattern of it, right? If you did that once a week, it might actually serve you really, really well. It might be great, but it doesn't mean that's the pattern that works to do that all the time, all day, every day.
Yeah. Josh, thank you so much for the conversation. I love how we just I don't know, your personality test sounds fascinating, and I can't wait to go do that. One more time, what's the URL for that?
PolaritySystems.com, and if anybody wants to find me on Instagram, my handle is Josh Terry Plays.
Fantastic. I'm going to do some plugs here. Guys, I am building my own YouTube cinematic universe. If you enjoy it, please subscribe. That really helps us out. If you leave a comment, Josh has shared a ton of ideas, post in the comments, what you think. By the way, whenever I post anything, if you share your thoughts, that's super, super helpful, right? Makes me feel like I'm not shouting into the void by myself, right? This is a two-way conversation. So please, I like to talk if you haven't realized. So fucking post in the comments because I'll talk back. You can help by liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and posting a comment to help the YouTube algorithm push this stuff. Also, guys, the tools that I use to produce this stuff cost money, and you know what? I'm a person trying to have success and build a business, so that takes money. If you are interested in some of the fun stuff that I do over on Patreon, I'm trying to give advice. I'm doing other behind the scenes stuff that's super fun. There's just a video of me dancing to Ra Ra Rasputin. Do you know this song, Josh? It's a very good song.
I've heard.
I just, 5 minutes of me just like dancing really, really, really intensely in this room. It's
That's
something.
quality material right there.
Oh yeah, it's gonna change your life for sure.
Kind
But
of
I don't
like my
know.
Space Western playlist.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah. Just
yeah,
like
quality.
transformative.
Yeah, everybody go check out the dancing.
Oh yeah, it's great. Cool. Josh, thank you so much for coming on, and I hope everybody has a great day.
It was such a pleasure. Thank you very much.